The pen in my sister's hand moved in a perfect familiar loop, forming the final A of my name, Alara Vance. It was my signature. Every curve, every precise angle, every slightly heavier downstroke. It was a perfect copy. But I wasn't the one holding the pen. My sister Serafina smiled, a sickly sweet expression of triumph, as she slid the document across the mahogany desk to the bank's lawyer. "There," she said, her voice like honey. "All settled." I stood frozen, a silent scream trapped in my throat. Beside her, our mother and father nodded in grim approval. My mother, Catherine, even reached out to pat Serafina's hand. "You always did have the steadiest hand, darling. So much more decisive than Alara." I finally found my voice, a choked, desperate sound. "You can't. That's forgery. That's my grandmother's house. She left it to me, the trust fund, everything." The lawyer, a man whose tailored suit probably cost more than my car, didn't even look at me. He looked at my father. The documents seemed to be in order. With this signature, the estate is transferred to the family holding company. "No!" I lunged, trying to grab the papers. My father's hand clamped down on my arm like a steel trap. "Alara, stop this. You're making a scene. You've been unstable ever since your grandmother passed. We all know she wasn't in her right mind." "She was!" I shrieked, tears blurring my vision. "You're stealing from me. Serafina, how could you? It's my name!" Serafina finally looked at me. Her eyes, so like mine but utterly devoid of warmth, were filled with a chilling pity. "Alara, you're hysterical. You signed these last night. Don't you remember? You asked me to bring them in for you. You said the pressure was just too much for you." She had an answer for everything. She always did. That was the day my life ended. They didn't just steal my inheritance. They used the Serafina's perfect, practiced forgeries to paint me as insane. Forged diary entries about my mood swings. Forged letters to doctors detailing my paranoia. It was my word against her. And her perfect copy of my handwriting. They won. I was committed to a quiet, private institution upstate. My parents paid for it with my money. "It's for the best," my mother told the doctors, her eyes full of false tears. "She's a danger to herself." In that sterile white room, I learned the true meaning of despair. The drugs they gave me made the world fuzzy, but my rage kept me lucid. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Serafina living in my house, spending my money, living the life that was mine. The family visited once. Serafina wore a new cashmere coat, a shade of blue my grandmother and I had always loved. "We just wanted to see how you were settling in," she said, filing her nails. "You're a monster," I whispered, my tongue thick from the medication. My mother sighed. "See, still so angry. The doctor said the sedatives would help with this. Perhaps they need to up the dosage." That was the last thing I ever heard her say. That night, a nurse came in with a new injection. "Just to help you rest, dear," she said. I felt the cold liquid slide into my vein, a different kind of cold. It spread fast, locking my lungs, stopping my heart. As the darkness flooded my vision, my last thought wasn't of fear. It was a single, burning, impossible promise. She will not get away with this. Then a violent gasp. I wasn't in the sterile room. I wasn't cold. I was warm, and my sheets smelled like the fabric softener my mother used to buy when I was in high school. I shot upright, my heart hammering a frantic, living rhythm against my ribs. My room, my childhood room, pink floral wallpaper I'd always hated. The stack of textbooks on my desk. I scrambled out of bed and stared into the mirror. A girl of 18 stared back. Me. But not the hollowed-out, medicated shell I'd become. This was me before. Healthy, young, untouched by the ultimate betrayal. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The date glowed on the screen. October 23rd, my 18th birthday. My grandmother was still alive. It was the exact day, I remembered with a jolt, that she had first pulled me aside to tell me about her will. It was the day the clock had started ticking on my own murder. I sank to the floor, my breath coming in ragged sobs. I had died. I was dead. And now, I was back. The tears of terror and confusion slowly turned into something else, a cold, sharp, and utterly clarifying rage. I had been given a second chance, and I was not going to waste it on being a victim. Serafina had spent a lifetime perfecting my handwriting. In this life, I was going to make that skill her prison. The abuse, I realized, had started so early I'd mistaken it for normal family dynamics. Serafina was the golden child. I was the afterthought, the scapegoat, the first draft that she, the improvement, was meant to correct. Our parents orchestrated this dynamic. I was quiet, studious, and artistic. Serafina was loud, charming, and utterly ruthless. Anything I did, she had to do better. If I got a B on a test, she'd get an A. If I joined the art club, she'd run for student president. But she had one failing. She had no originality. She was a mimic. And her greatest, most obsessive act of mimicry was me. It started with my homework. In 5th grade, I'd spend hours on a history paper, carefully writing out my research. The next day, Serafina would turn in a paper with the exact same words, written in a flawless imitation of my neat, looping cursive. When the teacher, confused, called our parents, my mother had laughed. "Oh, that's just Sarah. She admires her big sister so much. Alara probably helped her with it." I was forced to apologize. It escalated. She started reading my diary. When she found entries about a boy I liked, she'd forge new pages in my own hand, writing cruel, embarrassing things. Then she'd accidentally leave the diary where my parents, or worse, the boy himself, would find it. "Alara, I am appalled at the filthy things you wrote," my mother would scold, holding up a page of perfect forgery. Serafina would never. But her true obsession was my connection to our grandmother. Grandmother Adeline was my only ally. She was a formidable woman, a retired university professor, and a gifted calligrapher. She saw my parents' shallow materialism and Serafina's budding sociopathy for exactly what they were. She saw me. "You have a gift, Alara," she'd tell me, guiding my hand as we practiced lettering. "Your hand has rhythm. It has a voice. Don't ever let anyone silence it." She was the one who taught me to write. She was the one who instilled in me a love of art and literature. And Serafina, who had no patience for practice and no trace of artistic soul, hated it. She couldn't stand that I had something of my own, something from grandmother that she couldn't charm her way into. So she stole it. She'd steal my practice notebooks. She'd trace my letters for hours. She'd forge notes to my teachers, signing me up for clubs I didn't want, excusing me from classes I loved. My parents encouraged it, calling it helpful. "It's wonderful that Serafina can sign your permission slips, Alara. Your handwriting is so hesitant. Hers is so much more confident." The ultimate theft, I knew, was always meant to be the inheritance. In my first life, grandmother had gotten sick just after my 20th birthday. On my 18th birthday, today, she had taken me to lunch and told me her secret. "Alara," she had said, her hand covering mine, "my will is specific. My house, the trust fund my husband left me, it all goes to you. I am leaving your parents and Serafina a token amount, enough to be polite, but the bulk is yours. I trust you to be a steward for it, not a spendthrift." I had been naive. I'd cried, thanked her, and promised to do right by her. And then, in my grief after her death, I had let my family help me with the estate. That one moment of vulnerability was all Serafina needed. But not this time. This time, when my grandmother called to invite me to my birthday lunch, I had a new answer. "Grandmother," I said, my voice perfectly calm, "I would love to, but can we meet at your lawyer's office instead? I have something I need to show you both. It's a matter of forgery." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Mr. Allister's office? Alara, what's this about?" It's about my future, I said. And yours. I met grandmother at Mr. Allister's office. He was an older gentleman, sharp-eyed, and exactly as I remembered him from my first life's final awful meeting. Alara, grandmother said, rushing to hug me. You look pale. Are you all right? You sounded so grim on the phone. I'm fine, Grandma, but we need to talk. I turned to Mr. Allister. Sir, I believe you are the Anthis, executor of my grandmother's will. He raised an eyebrow. That is a confidential matter. I know she's leaving me the house and the trust fund, I said flatly. Grandmother gasped. Elara, I was going to tell you. You did, I said, my voice softening. And I love you for it. But you need to understand why you were right to do it. I opened my backpack and pulled out a binder I'd spent all morning assembling. It was filled with years of Serafina's work, the copied homework assignments I'd secretly saved, the forged diary page I'd ripped out in a rage years ago, a thank you note she'd written for me to a relative, signed with my name. I placed them on the desk. My sister, Serafina, has been forging my handwriting for almost a decade. My parents not only know, they encourage it. They call it improving on me. Mr. Allister picked up 2 of the documents, holding them to the light. His eyes narrowed. This is remarkable. The letter forms are identical. She's a perfect mimic, I said. When you pass, Grandmother, and I pray it's not for many, many years, they will not hesitate. They will use her skill to steal everything you leave me. They did it in my first... I stopped, catching myself. They will do it. They will forge my signature on deeds, on bank transfers, and they will leave me with nothing. They might even try to have me declared incompetent. Grandmother looked horrified. Catherine? Robert? My own son? They wouldn't. They would, I said, my voice hard. They value Serafina's ambition and they despise my quietness. They see your money as their due and me as an obstacle. Grandmother sank into a chair, her hand on her heart. But she wasn't a fragile woman. Her shock solidified into a cold fury I recognized. It was her fury, her resolve that I had inherited. Alistair, she said, her voice like steel. She's right. I've seen the way they treat her. I've seen how Serafina mimics. I never believed it would go this far. Mr. Alistair looked at me, a new respect in his eyes. This is a very serious accusation, young lady, but you've come with proof. So, what is your proposal? This was the moment, my turning point. We can't just change the will to disinherit them, I said. They'd contest it. They'd use Serafina's forgeries to produce a fake will and claim I was the one who forged it. We have to be smarter. We have to set a trap. And the bait has to be the very thing she's so proud of. I leaned forward. The title, She Copied My Handwriting for Years After Rebirth. I changed my signature and she got caught. That's my plan. Mr. Alistair blinked. I beg your pardon? It's just a phrase, I said quickly. The plan is this. Serafina has mastered my current signature, so we make that signature obsolete. As of today, I need a new legal signature, one that is complex, secret, and known only to me, Grandmother, and you. Grandmother's eyes lit up, the calligrapher in her instantly grasping the idea. A private sigil, not just a name, but a design. Exactly, I said. We will design it together. It will be beautiful, intricate, and impossible to replicate without knowing the method. We will then immediately file this new signature with every legal entity. My bank, which you will help me set up today, Mr. Allister. The DMV, the passport office. We will make this new signature my identity. And the old one? Mr. Allister asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. The old one, I said, feeling a thrill of cold power, becomes the bait. I will continue to use it for everything public. my schoolwork, my letters, any trivial document my family might see. I will let Serafina keep practicing it. I will let her think she has the key. And the will? Grandmother asked. We re-execute the will today, Mr. Allister said, catching on. We make a new, ironclad version. We'll have it videotaped. We will have nurses from your doctor's office as witnesses, verifying your sound mind. And Alara, he pointed a pen at me, you will sign your acceptance of executorship with your new signature. We will lodge a copy of that signature specimen with the will itself in a sealed envelope. The trap is set, I whispered. Grandmother reached across the desk and took my hand. Her grip was firm. My dear, brilliant girl, I knew you were strong. Let's go to the bank, and then let's design a masterpiece. The next 2 years were the strangest of my life. I lived a double existence. Outwardly, I was the same Alara. I went to college locally, studying art history and business. I endured my family's casual cruelty, their constant belittling comparisons to Serafina. Alara, your grades are fine, but Serafina, she's pre-law and president of the debate club. She's going somewhere, my father would say at dinner. Don't worry, Daddy, Serafina would coo. I'll make sure to hire Alara to decorate my new office when I'm a partner. I would just smile, nod, and continue using my old familiar signature on my homework. All the while, Serafina watched me, her eyes sharp. She'd borrow my notebooks, and I'd let her. I'd leave my checkbook for my small student bank account, an account separate from my real one, on my desk. I even lost my old driver's license, knowing she'd find it and study the signature. She was perfecting her weapon, unaware I had already changed the locks. In secret, my real life was happening. My new signature was a work of art. Grandmother and I had spent 6 months designing it. It incorporated a stylized flourish from her own maiden name, a complex series of loops that looked like a simple ornament, but was, in fact, a specific sequence of 5 connected letters. It was a rhythm, a dance of the pen that was impossible to guess. I practiced it until my hand ached. Then I went with Mr. Allister and Grandmother to a new bank, far across town. There I met the branch manager, a discerning woman named Ms. Henderson. We opened a new account, the one the trust would eventually be tied to. We filed the signature card. We set up security protocols. Any transaction over $500 required a phone call and an in-person signature verification. This account, Mr. Allister explained to her in private, is likely to be the target of a sophisticated fraud attempt from within the client's own family. Ms. Henderson's expression firmed. I understand. This branch will be prepared. We filed the new signature everywhere. My new passport, my new driver's license, my social security card. Legally, the Alara Vance my family knew no longer existed on paper. Grandmother's health began to fail, just as it had before. This time it was different. I didn't just grieve, I prepared. We spent her last months together, not in fear, but in quiet conspiracy. We cataloged every piece of art in her home. We went over the financials. She told me stories about every piece of furniture. This house is your fortress, Alara, she said one afternoon, her voice thin but her eyes bright. Don't let those wolves have a single splinter. I won't, I promised, my hand closing over hers. When she passed, the grief was just as sharp and devastating as the first time. But this time, it wasn't laced with terror. It was tempered by a cold, hard resolve. The funeral was a disgusting charade. My mother wept crocodile tears. My father delivered a eulogy about family values. Serafina stood beside me, squeezing my arm in a pantomime of comfort, her eyes already scanning the contents of the house I knew she believed was hers. Don't you worry about a thing, Alara, she whispered to me as the casket was lowered. I'll handle all the boring paperwork. You're just too emotional for all this. I just nodded, my face buried in a handkerchief. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. The will reading was set for a week later at Mr. Allister's office. The air was electric. My parents and Serafina arrived dressed as if for a coronation. Mr. Allister, impassive, read the will. It was exactly as I remembered. A token sum of $10,000 each to my parents and Serafina, in acknowledgement of their relation. And then all the rest and residue of my estate, including my home at 1420 Willow Creek, all its contents, and the entirety of the Adeline Vance Trust Fund, I bequeath to my beloved granddaughter, Ilara Vance, who has been a light in my life and whose integrity I trust absolutely. The explosion was immediate. "This is an outrage!" my mother shrieked, jumping to her feet. "She was senile. Ilara poisoned her against us." "This is invalid," my father blustered. "We'll contest this. We'll have it thrown out." Serafina, however, was quiet. She was just watching me, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. Mr. Allister held up a hand. "I assure you, the will is ironclad. Mrs. Vance was of perfectly sound mind as attested by 2 physicians. Furthermore," he pressed a button on his desk, and a TV screen on the wall lit up. It was grandmother. She looked frail, but her voice was clear. I, Adeline Vance, being of sound mind and body. She read the key clause aloud, then looked directly at the camera. "I am making this recording to ensure my wishes are known. My son and his wife have been a profound disappointment. My granddaughter Serafina is a person of flexible morality. Only Ilara has earned my trust. This is my final and absolute testament." The room was silent. My father's face was purple. My mother looked like she was going to be sick. Serafina just smiled. A tiny secret smile. She thought this changed nothing. She had the key. She had my hand. As we left, I staged my final move. I tripped on the carpet, my briefcase flying open, scattering papers everywhere. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy." My mother rolled her eyes. "For God's sake, Ilara, get your things." As my father helped me, I deliberately left one folder behind, kicked just under the edge of a chair in the waiting room. It was a beautiful, embossed blue folder, labeled Estate Pending. Inside was the bait: blank deed transfer forms for the house, blank withdrawal slips for the Adeline Vance Trust Fund, slips I'd had printed from a third-party company, not the bank itself, and the masterpiece, a fake, but very official-looking letter from a high-end property developer offering an exorbitant sum for the house, contingent on a private sale within 10 business days. I left the office in a fluster, my father lecturing me on my incompetence the whole way. "You can't even hold a briefcase, Ilara. How do you expect to manage an estate? This is why your grandmother was wrong. You're a child." "I know," I whispered, letting the tears come. I don't know what to do." "Don't you worry," Serafina said, putting her arm around me. "I told you. I'll take care of everything." I got a text from Mr. Allister 2 hours later. "The package has been retrieved." The next 3 days were agonizing. I stayed at my small apartment near campus, jumping at every sound. I knew she was working. I pictured her at her desk, my old notebooks spread out, her head bent in intense, obsessive concentration. I imagined the sheer, narcissistic joy she must be feeling, forging my name, my old name, onto those documents. She wasn't just stealing my money. She was, in her mind, erasing me and becoming me, the final act of her lifelong impersonation. On the 4th day, Mr. Allister called. "They've made their move. Ms. Henderson at the bank received a call from your father, scheduling an appointment for this afternoon to liquidate the trust. And my office just received a filed deed of sale for the house, signed by Ilara Vance, transferring ownership to Vance Holdings, LLC. "It's time," I said, my heart hammering. "We are ready," he replied. "The police have been notified of a high-value fraud and yes, progress. They will be waiting in Ms. Henderson's office. I suggest you arrive in 1 hour." I dressed carefully. I wore a simple black dress, the one grandmother had always liked. I put my hair up, I looked in the mirror. The face that looked back was no longer a victim. It was an executioner. When I walked into the bank, the scene was already in progress. My family was seated at Miss Henderson's large desk. Serafina was in the center, looking smug. My father looked impatient. My mother was already discussing redecorating plans. Mr. Alistair was there too, standing to the side, his face a mask of professional neutrality. Two men in suits, who I knew were detectives, stood by the door. "And as you can see, Ms. Henderson," Serafina was saying, pushing a stack of withdrawal slips across the desk, "we'd like to liquidate the entire trust. We'll be moving it to a more flexible account. Alara signed all the paperwork this morning. She's just too distraught to be here." Ms. Henderson, a picture of calm, examined the slips one by one. She didn't look at them for long. "Indeed," she said. She then pulled a file from her drawer and opened it. She slid a single laminated card into the center of the desk. On it was my new signature. The beautiful, complex, artistic one. "This," Ms. Henderson said, her voice cutting through the room, "is the legal signature of Ms. Alara Vance, the only one this bank has on file." She tapped the forgeries. "These are not." The silence stretched. My mother's smile froze and cracked. My father's face went from purple to a pasty white. Serafina just stared. She snatched the card, her eyes darting between it and the forgeries. "What? What is this? This scribble. This isn't her name. This," she pointed frantically at her own perfect work, "is Alara's signature. I've seen it a million times. I watched her write it." "Did you?" I spoke from the doorway. All four of them turned. Serafina's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. "Alara, what are you doing here?" my father stammered. "You're supposed to be resting." "I'm feeling much better," I said, walking slowly into the room. I stood beside Ms. Henderson's desk and looked down at my sister. "You always were a brilliant copyist, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet. "But you copied the wrong thing." "What is this, Alara? What trick is this?" Serafina hissed, her eyes wide with panic. "It's no trick," Mr. Alistair said, stepping forward. He held up the deed of sale she had filed. "This document, purporting to transfer ownership of 1420 Willow Creek, is a forgery. The signature on it does not match the legal, notarized signature of the executor, Ms. Alara Vance." "It's her signature!" Serafina shrieked, finally losing her composure. "Tell them, Alara. Tell them it's yours. Tell them you asked me to do it." "I did no such thing," I said calmly. "I haven't used that signature for any legal document in over 2 years, not since my 18th birthday, in fact. That," I pointed to her forgery, "is a signature I continued to use only so you would feel confident enough to try this. It's a signature with no legal power, a ghost." My mother finally understood. You set her up. You did this to your own sister." "My own sister?" I turned my gaze on her and she actually flinched. "My own sister who, with your help, was planning to steal my home and my inheritance? My own sister who spent 20 years of my life stealing my work, my words, and my name? My own sister who, in another life, would have signed me into an asylum and left me to die?" That last part slipped out, a relic of a truth they could never understand. Serafina's face crumpled. The smugness, the confidence. It all evaporated, leaving only a terrified, grasping child. No, it's mine. It's hers. It's evidence," one of the detectives said, stepping forward. "Serafina Vance, you are under arrest for multiple counts of aggravated forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. Robert Vance, Catherine Vance, you are also under arrest for conspiracy." The room exploded. My mother began to scream, clawing at the detective as he cuffed her. My father just sagged, muttering, I'm ruined. Serafina. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. The cuffs clicked around her wrists, the same wrists that had so lovingly, so perfectly copied my name. "You'll never be me!" she screamed as they dragged her out. I stood by the desk and picked up one of the forged slips. I looked at the perfect looping E, the familiar A. My old self. "That," I said to Ms. Henderson, was the entire point. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Mr. Allister presented the binder I had compiled on my 18th birthday, showing a clear, decades-long pattern of identity theft. The bank provided the forged slips. Mr. Allister provided the forged deed. The prosecution presented the security footage from my grandmother's house, which I'd had installed, showing Serafina sneaking my briefcase, and more footage from our old home, which I'd set up in the study, showing her practicing the signature for hours. Her defense was what I expected. I always signed things for her. We were just close. She asked me to. But the jury didn't buy it. The videotape of my grandmother's will, my own testimony, and the cold, hard proof of the two different signatures sealed their fate. Serafina was found guilty on all counts. With the value of the estate, the charges were severe. She was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in a state prison. Her perfect hand, her confident script, would now be used to write letters to a parole board that would deny her again and again. My parents were convicted of conspiracy. They received 5 years, suspended to probation, but the financial penalties bankrupted them. They lost their house. Their reputations were destroyed. They were ruined, powerless, and utterly pathetic. As for me, I was finally free. I moved into my grandmother's house. The first thing I did was tear out the carpets my mother had always coveted and restore the original hardwood floors. I filled the rooms with light and art and the smell of ink and fresh paper. I used the trust fund, as I had always meant to start my own business, the Adeline Press. I was a bespoke calligrapher and designer. My work, born from a lifetime of practice and a secret second chance, was unique. It was strong. It was mine. My studio was my grandmother's old sunroom, overlooking the garden she had loved. Within a few years, my work was in high demand. I designed logos for major brands, wedding invitations for celebrities, and custom art for collectors who valued the unique hand of my work. I was successful, wealthy, and for the first time in either of my lives, I was at peace. One day, a letter arrived. It was from the state prison. The handwriting was jagged, angry, almost illegible. It was from Serafina. It was a long, rambling, hateful screed, blaming me for her life, for our parents' ruin, and demanding money, demanding I recant my testimony. I looked at this ugly, desperate scrawl, the real handwriting of my sister, and felt nothing but a distant pity. I picked up my favorite pen, dipped it in ink, and wrote 3 words on the outside of the envelope in my beautiful, flowing, new script. Return to sender. I dropped it in the mailbox and went back to my studio. I had a class to teach. A group of young women, all eager to learn the art of calligraphy, eager to find their own voice, their own line, their own name. I looked at their work, all of them so different, so beautifully, perfectly unique, and I signed my name to the lesson plan, my signature, my future, and I was, at last, truly Alara Vance.